G'day everybody, it's Stephen from Web Design with .NET. Here's another screencast where I'd like to go through how we go about combining our design components within our back-end code. Now specifically by that I mean how do we handle our CSS, LESS, SAS, whatever styling preprocessor you decide to use, how we combine those styling files as well as our scripting files, JavaScript files, so that they are in the right place within our project and also included at the right point in time as well, so that we get the full functionality of what we're doing. First of all, the example project that I'm working on here is the same template project that I've been using for most of the other screencasts that I've done. So if you haven't seen any of the other screencasts yet, I would recommend you go back and have a look at some of the earlier ones that I've done. I think the first or second one gives a rundown on what the project within this solution are, what their purposes are, and a bit of a structure, a bit of an explanation of the structure of each of those projects. So we won't worry about that with this screencast, we'll just jump straight in. So go back and have a look at those other ones if you are feeling a little bit lost as we go through here. So what we have is our solution. Specifically we're going to look at the template.web project, which is our MVC web project within this solution. So what we have is we have a content folder which has our CSS. We have a SAS file here as well, which is compiling down our CSS and our minified CSS file. So pretty much stock standard, straight out of the MVC wizard. When you create a new MVC project, we get this content folder and then some we have our CSS files within that. Bootstrap was, I think I don't even know whether I manually added Bootstrap or whether that came as part of the wizard, but we're using the Bootstrap CSS file. And we also have this scripts folder where we have, again, we have Bootstrap, a minified version of that, we have jQuery, and we have Modernizer and Respond scripts as well. So what we want to do, obviously, is we want to use these JavaScript files and CSS files within our solution. So what we probably would normally do is if we had a HTML file and we were building up our HTML within that, so we've got our head, our body, and the end of the HTML closing tag. Generally, or best practice is we would put our CSS files in the head and our JavaScript files would go generally as the last things before the closing body tag. The reason we do that is we put JavaScript at the bottom, our JavaScript files at the bottom, because we don't want loading of these JavaScript files to block the loading of our content within our page. So we put them at the bottom of the page, and that's when they get executed. So this is what it would probably look like, and what I've done here is, if you know anything about MVC, you'll know that MVC uses or can use a layout page. If you're from the web forms world, it's very similar to a master page. So what we have is kind of a shell which sits around the outside of our content. So this is that shell. So we're opening our HTML, we have our head, we have the body, and this content that you see here, every page which uses this layout file will have this HTML wrapped around the body of that page. I'll explain what that means in a minute. I won't go into too much detail. If you do need to learn a little bit more about MVC, then maybe I'll cover that in another screencast in the future, but there's lots and lots of resources out there on how to use MVC. The key that we have in MVC is this render body method. So what will happen if we go to our views and if we go home, our index file here, I'll look at that in a moment, but this from here all the way down to here will appear before anything that appears in our index page. This render body will take all of the content from our index view and insert it into that position. Once that's finished rendering, it will then render the rest of the HTML that we see here. So that would look, if we look at the index view, you can see that this view doesn't have opening HTML tags, doesn't have an opening and closing body, it's just straight HTML. And that's because the layout page handles all of that, encapsulate all that, the containers and the specific HTML tags that we need. So that's the basic premise of MVC. So what we want to do, we don't generally need to add our CSS files and our JavaScript files in our views because we can put it in our layout page. And that's fantastic because that means that we can put stuff into our layout page which will be used throughout the entire application. What I have done here, this underscore view start view, this is a special MVC view which tells the MVC engine what the default layout page to use is. So what I've done is I've told MVC to use this as our main layout page. If we go to our index page, what we can do is we can manually, so by default there's no reference to a layout page in our index page here. So by default the underscore view start view has this reference. So if the view doesn't specify the layout page that it uses, it will use whatever this view says to use. We could, I can't remember the exact syntax of this, but we could say layout equals, I think we could do this. And that would tell this view specifically to use this simple layout page. Or, see there's another layout page here, we could tell it to use a different layout page. Alright, so we're just going to use the default layout page that the view start view suggests. Okay, let's get back to our layout page. So our simple layout page has head, we're setting some meta tags here, we've got a title, and then we insert our style sheets. So we're inserting the Bootstrap style sheet, we're inserting our own global style sheet, which has been done, it's been created by the SAS preprocessor, and we're using the minified version of that. I won't open the minified version, I'll open a normal one. So there's not much in it, but you can see that, that it has some styles in it. So obviously sequencing is quite important. We want to load Bootstrap and then we want to load our global CSS file so that anything that's in our global file will override our Bootstrap file if that's what we decide to do. But that's generally best practice is put your custom CSS files after the Bootstrap CSS file. So we put that at the top of the page so that these classes here, the classes are being set in these style sheets, and then they actually get implemented here throughout the HTML. And then we come through, so this is pretty much standard Bootstrap navigation. We're inserting our body text, which I mentioned before comes from our view. We're putting a footer in the bottom, and then we're manually adding our two JavaScript files. Bootstrap obviously is dependent on jQuery, so we do jQuery first, and then we do our Bootstrap minified script. I don't have a custom JavaScript file here, but if you were to create, let's create a JavaScript file, create a new JavaScript file, and we'll call it global.js. All right, and say we'll just create an anonymous self-executing function, and we'll say console.log. This is custom. Okay, so now we have a global.js file. So now we want to put that into our DOM. So Visual Studio is pretty handy for this. It just lets us drag and drop and throw it in there. And that's our script files. So now, if I build this, I've already got the page open. So if I refresh this, I'll just make a note of the fact that our simple layout page has the page title, which comes from our view, which is this, so home page, and then a dash, and then it says simple layout. So that's what we have here, home page dash simple layout. So that's our page. As I mentioned, our index page, it has a div of class of Jumbotron, and it has a h1 of ASP.NET. That's the very first HTML that we see in our index page. But there's this menu and this nav along the top of the page. So you can see that there is stuff being put into the DOM prior to this Jumbotron. And that's being done through our layout page. So if we also go back and we inspect this, you can see that in the head we have our Bootstrap and our global CSS files, and we also have our jQuery, Bootstrap, and JavaScript files. Okay, so that's what you would normally do if you didn't have the magic of what MVC calls bundle configuration. Now, a bundle allows you to take one or more CSS files, JavaScript files, create a bundle, and then insert that entire bundle into an area within the DOM. So what we will do is I will jump out of here and I'll flick back. I'll flick this back to our normal layout page. So now what I'll do is I will go over to this layout page. Now you can see there's not very many differences here. If I flick backwards and forwards between the two. So our layout page, again, we've got a doc type, we've got a head, we're opening and closing our head tags. We've got our nav at the top, we're rendering the body, and then we have this other section at the bottom here. Mostly the same, except for these areas where in this view we've manually inserted the reference to the files that we want. So instead, with our bundling, what we've done is here we've said render the styles bundle, which refers to this reference. It's the best way to explain it. And this bundle here is rendering the scripts bundle, which has this name. Similarly, at the bottom of the page, we're rendering scripts with this reference, rendering scripts with this reference. So let me show you how that works. The magic of these bundles is done under the app start folder, and these folders, or a lot of these files get automatically added to the project when you just go through the standard Visual Studio MVC wizard. So if we look at the BundleConfig class, you might notice what we have here. So if we go back to our layout, so we are rendering our styles with a reference of content/CSS. If we look for that here, content/CSS, what this file does is it creates or it adds a bundle with this reference and includes this file and this file. So what that will do is wherever we say styles.render using that reference, those two files will be rendered in the DOM. Same thing goes for scripts as well. So if we add a bundle, a script bundle with this reference, and we include Bootstrap JavaScript, Respond JavaScript in our layout, if we go down to our script section, we've got bundles Bootstrap. That's where these two files will be added. Similarly, we've got jQuery. Now there's some special syntax here that you can use when you're including files into a bundle as well. So our bundles jQuery, yep. So in this bundle, we will have the script. We're looking in the scripts folder of our project for a file that has jQuery dash, and then it has a version number .js. So if we look at our scripts file, what that will do is that reference will grab that file, because that's, let me close that, jQuery dash version.js. So we could change that and we could make that jQuery and then .min.js. So instead of taking that file, it will take that file. You can see here as well, we're adding a new bundle, script bundle, bundles jQuery val, and it's going to look at jQuery, a file with the file name of jQuery.validate, and then something. Okay, and it will, what that will do is it will include that file, and that file. Now the minified and the unminified files, that the bundling engine makes a decision on which of those files to add based on how you are running your site or your project. Let me just remove this. I'll quickly touch on this. Because at the moment we're running in debug mode, what will happen is when we execute this script bundle will grab the unminified file. But once we move to release mode, that will then always, if it finds a minified file in your project, it will grab the minified file. So you don't need to specify whether you want the minified or the unminified file. The bundling engine will do that for you. We won't worry about that for now, but just know that for reference. Okay, so I've explained to you how we do referencing, some special conventions that we have here. We can specify, this is really useful because once jQuery goes to jQuery 3.0, for example, this reference will still work because this will be jQuery 3.0.0. That will still be preserved. We don't have to come into our bundle config file and change this because it will be preserved because that convention has been preserved. Okay, we can also have a star which will say give me everything that matches this, and regardless of what comes after validate. So as long any file that starts with that text. Modernizer, same thing. So let's run this and have a look at what's going on. So we have jQuery, we have Bootstrap. What we have different in this layout is that we're also including the Modernizer scripts. So that's why things will look a little bit different. And I did that on purpose so that you can see the difference between the two layout pages. So let's build that. And our index page is now going to use the layout page because I updated our view start view. So now if we come here, I'll just close our developer tools. We'll refresh that. So we know that we're now using this layout file because the title of this is title-with bundles. That's title-with bundles. So let's inspect this. Now let's have a look at the files that have been included for us. Now there's a whole heap of classes being set on the HTML tag. That is done by Modernizer. The Modernizer script does that. If you don't know anything about Modernizer, I would suggest you do some research on that. It's a great product. Now we have some different JavaScript files here. So we have a jQuery and a Bootstrap file, but now we also have the respond.js. You remember that on our simple layout, we didn't include that file here. But on our layout page, we are now let's go back to that again. Sorry, I'm looking in the wrong place. Let's stick with the head first. So we have Bootstrap CSS, global CSS, and we also have a Modernizer JavaScript file. You can see that's been done here. So our content CSS will give us these two files. Our Modernizer script bundle. Modernizer script bundle will add scripts, anything that starts with Modernizer, which is that guy, Modernizer-262. And there you go, we've got it there. And what I mentioned before, we've got jQuery, Bootstrap, and Respond.js in the footer. We've got jQuery and Bootstrap. So let's go to our bundle file. So our jQuery bundle will have the jQuery JavaScript file. The Bootstrap bundle has got bootstrap.js and respond.js, and they're the two files that have been added in there as well. So there you go. I hope that helps explain how to do your bundling within your MVC projects. It's very, very handy. It's a very handy way to be sure that your files are being put in the right place at the right time, and do it globally so that you don't have to worry about, like on our insert page, you don't have to add jQuery. Like if you're doing a website which is using jQuery throughout, you don't want to have to go through and add, say if you did this, you wanted to add jQuery to that page, and then you wanted to add Bootstrap afterwards. What happens when the jQuery version changes? You then have to go through every single page in your application and change that reference. You could change the name of that file, but then it becomes a little bit more difficult for you to know what version of the file you have within your project, because now the name of that has changed. So this gives you a way, with your BundleConfig class, this gives you a way to handle all of that at a really high global level. So guys, I hope that was helpful, and I hope that helped you understand bundling and how to use bundles within the framework of an MVC project. So please give us a high rating on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. Feel free to check out the website, which is www.webdesignwith.net. On there you'll find more articles and other screencasts. Like I said at the very beginning, one of the earlier screencasts goes into the structure of this MVC project that we've been using, or this MVC solution that we've been using in this screencast. So that may give you some ideas on structure and that's just the general usability within that solution. You can also find me on Twitter at WDWDNet or at Stephen Woolston. That's Stephen STEVEN, Woolston WOOLSTON. And from now, I'll see you next time.